Well, welcome everybody. Now we're going to talk about the SAGE perspective, which I believe is kind of one of the most powerful components of a whole positive intelligence program.
Mhm.
So, Kim, any first words to introduce the SAGE perspective and your experience of it?
Well, I too would agree it's probably one of the most powerful parts of this program. I've learned how to look at everything as a gift, and that's kind of a game I play now because not everything can feel like a gift right away. Yeah, it depends on how strong our muscle is. But this idea that everything could be considered a gift and that there's some gift to get out of it, what a game changer when things get hard to realize, all right, let's see what it is. That's what happens for me today versus in the past was like, not that again. No. So there was all that resistance to life and what life was throwing me. And now today it feels more like a ball game,
Mm-hmm.
then somebody throws one of those red balls that we used to have at recess, in comes the red ball and I catch it. And it's like I'm looking at it going, that's not the ball. I don't want that. That wasn't what I wanted. But it's like quickly realizing, oh, but there's probably a gift in here. It feels like it gets passed on as soon as I start that process of noticing
Mm-hmm.
gift here. I just need to find it sometimes. What about for you?
Yeah, it's funny. I will get a lot of pushback on this idea. And so I've reframed it a little bit in a way that I get much less pushback. And
Ah.
that is that I do say bad things do happen.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not that the gift resides in the bad thing. The sage perspective is your personal commitment to take
Mm-hmm.
whatever's sitting in front of you and make something good out of it.
Yes.
And I've
Yeah.
gotten a lot more positive response to that.
Mm.
So then it's hard for them to go, well, what's the gift in this? What's the gift in this? I absolutely don't believe that this situation is a good situation. I don't see how you could argue that all these people dying or being killed or whatever in this is good, right? How could you find a gift in a school shooting with all these little kids dead, right? And so you get those kinds of arguments from people, and and they're true, right? It I can't imagine anyone seeing a gift inherent in these little children being killed. But what I can do is say, I'm committed to use the situation. If I'm in this situation, I'm committed to finding some good in it. And a lot of times, what I'll do is I'll share a story of our dog dying. And this
Mm.
just happened a couple of years ago. And so I was doing a lot of PQ boot camps at the time. And our dog died. And I said, okay, so I don't see how anyone can necessarily say there's a gift in a dog dying, right? In a pet. It's sad for everybody. But what I did is I committed to facilitating my family through the grieving experience in a way that was useful. And
Mm.
so, for example, I committed to giving my husband time with the dog. Like we decided we'd keep her one day and we'd take her in that night because we wanted to make sure that my son got home from work in time to see her and be
Mm.
with us. And my daughter was across the way. So we wanted to make sure she had a chance to FaceTime and
Mm.
kind of be with the dog remotely a little bit before we let her go. So I kind of gave my husband that. But then, I was talking to my husband, he's like, I don't want to cry in front of our son. I'm like, yes, you do. You want
Mm.
to cry in front of our son because my son has never seen you cry and he
Mm.
doesn't know that it's okay.
Right.
And so if you model that,
Mm.
then he will learn that it's okay for a man to cry and it's okay to be together as a family and support each other for something like this. And that's what happened. The three of us, because my daughter was back east, the three of us, my husband, my son, and I, we sat in the room with the dog for, like an hour just to be with her before she had to be put to sleep. And my husband cried in front of my son. And I feel like that was such a gift in
Mm.
that it was something our family could learn together. How do we support each other through hard times? So it's not like I'm dismissing the dog or dismissing a hard time and not identifying as a hard time. And I think sometimes people misinterpret the sage perspective as I'm supposed to take a bad thing and, somehow degraded by pretending it's not bad and be a Pollyanna about it. So I had to make that shift in how
Mhm.
I talked about the sage perspective to really get people to embrace it. And I'm fully on board with it. I mean, I'm super committed to finding gifts in everything. To me, every bad thing that happens to me is an opportunity to grow. And I'm finding myself building more and more resilience every challenge I find. So I find myself having a lot less personal pushback when bad things happen. I still struggle when things happen to my health. So that's something I probably have to work on is
Mhm.
like,
Mhm.
when I feel like I'm sick or whatever, then I want to sulk and I'll
Mhm.
allow myself to get hijacked. And I don't want to take on I don't see any gift in me being sick right now.
That's
There's no good time to be sick. There's no gift in being sick. So I've got a little of that happens sometimes, but for the most part, I'm pretty committed to finding something good that can
So I love that you're bringing up being sick because that's my story this week. I'm recovering right now, but so the gifts can come in the form of knowledge. We learn something new. The gift can come in the form of making us stronger. So we're growing a strength, and then sometimes the gift can be that it inspires us somehow.
happen.
This week, I went and visited my grandbabies who are very little, and their house is always full of lots of little bugs. And sure enough, I came home and within 24 hours, I could feel the bug moving into my system. And having visited them, 6 months ago, that bug ended up lasting for about 30 days for me, like in a low profile way. But I'm like, oh, no, no, I do not want it to last 30 days again. So what I've learned, I have the gift of knowledge coming in because I have, metrics, little ring that tracks, how I'm sleeping and what my body temperature is doing. And I haven't had it long enough to know if it would help me know if I was getting sick. Well, sure enough, the data points showed literally when the bug came in, it showed everything in me going, uh-oh, bad, bad. You're not doing as well. Your readiness isn't as great. And today was the day it started shifting, going the other direction, and I can feel it in my system. So data, I've got the gift of more knowledge that I've gained as a result of this little experiment that I'm in. And then the gift of growing stronger. So a way that I'm growing stronger with this sickness is, this time I shifted gears very quickly when I realized, oh, I did it again. I brought home a bug again. And I went into self-care mode. So I've been sleeping a lot. I've been drinking my liquids. I did not go exercise for the last couple days like I like to do. I haven't done anything extra. I've literally kind of stood down from what I like to do normally. And the way that that's so different today is my saboteurs rise whenever I get sick. They're like, I don't want to be sick. I hate being sick. I'm not going to slow down. It's not going to keep me from doing what I want to do. And this time I'm like, I hear you. And, and so yes, and
Hmm.
let's just go ahead and take care of ourselves. And so I don't know, experiment's still unfolding, but for me, what an opportunity to practice our sage perspective this week.
I love that. I love that. And to piggyback onto that, I have to say I have something in common with you. I don't have grandchildren, but I do have a niece and nephew. And same thing. Every time I see them, they're sick. And I'm never sick until I see them, and then I get sick. I saw them and they were sick about 2 weeks ago. So I think this time I didn't get sick. However, the other people I was with, my brother and my dad, they got sick. So my brother got it, my dad got it. So I still have a chance of getting whatever that bug is. But I think one of the gifts of being sick is you build your immune system. So going through all of that COVID, I mean,
Mm.
I didn't get sick for years. I was isolated. I work out of my home and everything. And I was thinking, oh, that's so good. I haven't gotten sick in so long. And then this year I've gotten sick a lot. And I thought, oh, my body needs to get sick sometimes. Otherwise, there's no way for my body to build and rebuild the immune system. So
Mhm.
that was a good revelation of a gift.
Mm.
I think for some people, it's, a good trigger to practice self-care
Mm.
and to
I agree.
really enjoy that self-care.
One of the things that you mentioned in your example, and it's also true for me a little bit with being sick, is how important it is always to grieve. So
Mm.
just this whole sage perspective, I mean, it's easy to accept things when they feel good and they're what I wanted, right? That's easy. I don't have any problem accepting that. But when it's something that I didn't want, or it's something I didn't expect, that's when it feels like the ball got thrown, kind of thrown unexpected at me. And I'm sitting holding this ball. I'm like, I didn't want this ball. So that grief process that you were mentioning of taking time to grieve it, it doesn't mean when something bad happens that I condone it necessarily. That's not what it means, but feeling my feelings and grieving in a very sage way, as Shazad would say, literally it's feeling the feelings of the grief in me versus the story I make up about the circumstances. Sometimes that's part of my sage perspective, the story that I make up about what happened. Is it a victim story? Or is it a story of, oh, ouch, ouch, that wasn't what I wanted. And then now what do I want to do about it? Again, what you were saying, how do we claim a gift here? How do we turn it into a gift? How do we find something that matters and is worth it so much that it kind of almost counters the pain that might have been caused by this thing that happened? So I don't know, have you got clients that you've worked with where you've had something come up that you had to help them convert into a gift or anything?
I'm sure I have, and it's not coming up right away, but I think just having you prompt me that way, some will pop into my mind. And while I'm waiting for that to happen, I have something that I'm sulking about now. And so I'm thinking about how you're talking about grief and how we have to grieve some of these things. So I have a knee issue that I don't want to have, but I think if you allow yourself to feel a little bit crappy about it, but then you say, okay, what am I going to do now? Right?
Mm-hmm.
What am I going to do? How am I going to take my power back? I feel like a lot of these saboteurs come up the moment you're feeling powerless. I mean, with victim, it's sort of obvious, but I was talking to a client that has a controller saboteur, and hasn't done PQ yet, but she was talking about the reactions and how to control those reactions. And I said, the moment you start feeling powerless is when you're going to start to yell. And she was like, oh, and I said, it sounds like a paradox, but that's when we get triggered, is when we start feeling powerless, because we feel a threat coming at us, but we don't feel capable of responding to that threat. So right. I think when I go into my sad mode is when it's like, darn, I can't do anything about this sickness except wait it out or whatever. So I really appreciate what you said about just allowing yourself to grieve a little bit, kind of grieve a little bit, but then commit to doing something about it, whether it's resting or learning or allowing your immune system to do its work or readjusting your lifestyle or something like that. So I still haven't thought about helping clients with the SAGE perspective. So I'd love to hear if maybe you've had some clients that you've had to help work through the SAGE perspective. And then maybe I'll think of one as soon as you start sharing some stories.
So one of the things that we do in the program is we do the chapters of our book in our life, right? So chapters of our story and things that might have happened that seemed really bad at that point in our life, and then how actually it ended up becoming like a gift. And I found that that's been really powerful with clients, taking time to acknowledge the hard and grieve it and get it and really appreciate it, but then to claim or name, right, whatever it was that came out of that. And oftentimes what we find as we look at the story of somebody's life, those things are adding up and bringing them forward into the here and now with a skill set or an awareness that is totally different. It's like those things often have helped define them and make them who they are today, because they had to face things that were so hard sometimes. It really pulls our values into place, because you have to make choices when something really bad happens. Sometimes you have to make a decision. What do you choose at those moments? What do you have to do to step up? So I found that really helpful. And the way that can become fun then is, so that brings us up to the present. And now what would you want the next chapter to be? Right? Or how do you want to title this overall book of your life story? So it's a way to step back out of it all and kind of see it from a different perspective, I find.
I love that. And as you say that, it reminds me, I've done the exercise of having people give examples from their past of things that have happened and how they became a gift in retrospect. But what I love about what you're just talking about, doing that exercise where you kind of go back and you come up with several examples of things that have happened to you that have been bad, but then how they've shaped your character. You know, I used
Mhm.
to have a boss that would pat me on the shoulder and say, every time something bad happened, it's Bill's character, Bill's character. But how it's contributed to their character. And I remember, I don't know if this was an exercise that I was running or that I was a part of, but I remember asking people to go back and rewrite their life from scratch.
Mm,
Like if they had a magic wand and they could redo the whole thing.
mm,
And I remember at least one person saying, "Oh, I wouldn't change anything." Maybe it was even in our class. I wouldn't change anything because if I hadn't gone through those things, I wouldn't be who I am today. And
mhm.
I think that's what I think it was somebody in our class that said that. I wouldn't be the same person today if I hadn't gone through those things. And I need to be who I am today to be able to be capable of handling what I'm handling now.
Wow.
And the way she said that, it was a real revelation. I really resonated with that. And I thought, yeah, what would you change? Would you change the loss? Would you change any of the bad things that happened to you?
Mm,
Because even if you didn't realize it at the time, you were probably growing from it in some way. It
mhm,
probably shaped you in a good way. Although
mm,
I don't know. I mean, I think the jury's still out for me. Like if you were raped as a child, I don't know that you would say that.
mm, mhm. Those are you know, those are the tough ones when it's really big things like that. I know in the boot camp we try not to practice the really big things because sometimes there's more grieving that is required then, right? There is more work to be done, whether it's through therapy or whatever, to grieve the loss. It's when it's significant like that, it's a loss that never gets to come around again, you know. So
Mhm.
how to then we talk about with finding the gift, how to use it to inspire us or somehow make it um as weighty, however it helps change us, whatever the gift is, how to make that as big or bigger than that loss. And when it's such a big one, that sometimes takes me a little bit to figure out.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. They do tell you in the boot camp to kind of stick to things that are somewhat light in the beginning and just wait.
Hmm.
And I do think that if you have trauma that you've sort of compartmentalized and you're not ready to go back to, that might be not something that you're looking for a gift in at this point. There's a process
Yeah.
that we have to go through. We have to grieve and heal
Yeah.
real trauma. And then maybe a gift can come from it. Maybe it's just the skill set of grieving and healing through trauma that becomes the gift. But I agree with the sage perspective. You do want to start. You don't want to pick the major traumas in your life.
Right.
And saying that, I used to do a lot of work when I started my coaching practice with people in career change. And so
Ah.
people would come to me that had been fired
Mm-hmm.
or been laid off, and they
Mm-hmm.
were petrified of going through the career transition process. And a lot of times, what I would start them out with is tell me how hard you worked to change when you were in this position, because often they weren't happy in it.
Mm-hmm.
And that people get totally kicked in the gut only a few times in their life. And those are the times when they have opportunities to really make a change. And
Wow.
I think setting the stage like that helps them begin to find a gift in
Mm-hmm.
being fired from a job, for example.
Mm-hmm. What I love about that is such a big shift in perspective because we are kicked in the gut when we lose our job or something so significant happens. And so much of this program, you know, it's mental fitness, it's positivity versus negativity. And this idea of how do I want to think? What do I want to spend my time thinking about? How do I want to think about it? How is it making me feel, because I have a choice in it? And what I love about the sage perspective is it's this idea of something that could feel very negative, could feel very hard, could take me there, and that option to also go, and I want to shift it into the gift. I want to shift it into making me grow. I want to shift it into defining me so that I can be a more powerful, more whatever. So it's kind of like that Aikido, you know, it's like you go with the
Mhm.
flow of it. It's the energy comes in and you go with it and it shifts, right? It's that shift,
Mhm.
you know, of energies and what do we want more energy of in our lives? And for most of us, that's why we're in the mental fitness program is we want more positivity We want more joy, and that means shifting that focus. It's that energy comes in and then whoop, there it goes. It's shifting
Yeah.
versus getting stuck. It's
Hmm.
stuck energy where it comes and is just stuck. Kicked in the gut is a very spot.
Yeah. Yeah. And it hurts. You said a little bit earlier in our conversation, and I don't know if it was this conversation or another one, but you talked about getting caught up in the story in your head. And there is an exercise that I do with clients. We call it the balloon exercise. But the idea is what's hurting you is not necessarily the event itself. It's the story that you're creating about the event. So what we do is we write the event itself in a box, but then we draw a line and we make a circle, and that circle is represented as a balloon. And in the circle, you write the story that you're telling about yourself about the event that's making you feel bad. And then the exercise is you have to come up with five other alternative possible stories that you can believe.
I love that.
And we do that with kids, and having them as balloons, you can say you get to pop all the balloons you don't like, and you get to keep the balloon you like the best,
Right.
because your balloon is actually a self-fulfilling prophecy. And if
Yes.
you make a positive story up about the event, then your energy is going to attract more positive outcomes. And I actually will walk people through it. I'll give them a scenario of a situation. I usually do it with two salespeople who go in and they're talking to a prospect, and the prospect's really mean to them. And so we have salesperson A and salesperson B, and salesperson A is really freaked out, and they're getting, all these negative thoughts about what that means. He hates me, he hates my product, I'm really annoying him, etc. And so responding from that energy. And the class can logically, I do this in classes a lot, they can logically kind of walk through that. They're going like, oh, I'll say, okay, what's he likely thinking? How's this going to affect his emotions? What behavior is going to naturally stem from that? And if he exhibits this emotional energy and this behavior, how's the client, the prospect, probably going to respond? And then I do salesperson B, and salesperson B, the only difference is the story that salesperson B makes up. And salesperson B has this belief that they're a great salesperson and that the product that they're representing is phenomenal. And so when the client starts getting distracted and being really mean, what's salesperson B going to make up that means?
Yeah.
And he's going to make up something that relates to the client, not that relates to him or his product. And he's going to get curious, and he's going to ask the client questions, and he's going to read, and the class can walk through all that so they can actually see how your balloon is your self-fulfilling prophecy. So I didn't really connect that to sage perspective, but it kind of is, because every balloon represents a perspective, and you can choose what perspective you sit in, right? And so you can sit in the gut, the hurt that you talked about, or you can take on a sage perspective. And as you do that, your emotional energy changes, how you respond to the situation changes, and then how the situation responds back to you changes.
I love
So
that.
saboteur begets saboteur, sage begets sage.
What a beautiful wrap up for sage perspective. I love that with the balloons. I can so imagine doing that. And I love what you said about the two salespeople, because the one is very much focused on what's wrong with me and all that's here, versus the second one is focused on, wow, that's so interesting because I know the product's good and I know I'm good. So what's going on here? It's such a different energy, that outward versus inward focus.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Any last words on sage perspective?
Life-changing.
That's a great one. I would say that the minute I made the commitment to appreciate things that happened in my life and to make them valuable to me, no matter what they were, was the minute that I became a lot less irritated with my life, and I started enjoying it more.
As well, that's me too. Thank you.
Excellent. So that is the sage perspective.